Good evening and welcome. This is Sarah Charney speaking. I am currently the Vice President of the Department of Service to Sisterhoods and Districts. In this series of webinars, we will present 3 phases of an effective membership campaign: readiness, recruitment, and retention. This evening, we will be focusing on readiness. You are all here and present because you understand that membership campaigns enable growth. That growth is critical to the success of sisterhood, and that without members, your sisterhood cannot serve your temple or provide educational, spiritual, and social programs that meet the diverse needs of women, or reach the larger community, or support the collective voice of WRJ. That is a tall order, but we are here to help. Sharon Zidney, one of the 2 co-chairs of the membership committee, has prepared a highly informative, helpful, and delightful presentation for us all. The other co-chair of this committee, Dara Amram, has prepared the second webinar of this series on recruitment, which will be presented on April 2nd at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. A reminder that you must register for each webinar individually. Before Sharon begins, I would like to introduce our super talented manager of this department, Rachel Juris, who will review some of the technical aspects of this webinar with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Now I'd like to review a few guidelines for the optimal webinar attendee experience. Please note this webinar broadcast has begun with all attendees in listen mode only. In the next couple of slides, we'll explain how to use your webinar control panel. This is a slide you'll see a picture of your control panel. Please note that the numbers in the control panel are simply an example. If this panel is getting in your way, simply click on the arrow on the upper left-hand side to minimize the panel. During our Q&A session later in the webinar, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. Since this is a large group, the easiest way for you to ask your question is to enter it into the questions log on your control panel. You can do so throughout the webinar, and we will do our best to answer your questions. Please note that using the questions log is also a good way to indicate if you are having a technical problem without addressing the entire group. Audio controls. You have the option of choosing one of 2 audio modes during this webinar, either telephone or mic and speakers. When using the telephone component, be sure to enter your audio PIN, which is displayed in the audio pane. Again, please note that the numbers here on this slide in the control panel are simply examples. If you are encountering any issues with your webinar experience, please type your questions into the question log, and we will do our best to assist you. If you continue to have difficulty with any portion of the webinar, please contact GoToWebinar Help either by calling their helpline at 1-888-259-8414 and selecting option 1, or by clicking on the Help option on the top of your webinar panel and selecting GoToWebinar Help. Thank you for your attention and patience. Now let's begin our presentation.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Sarah. Hi, my name is Sharon Zidney, and as Sarah said, I am the co-chair of the membership committee for WRJ. Thank you all for coming and taking time out of your busy evening to learn a little bit about readiness and becoming ready for a membership campaign. As Sarah mentioned, membership is critical to sisterhood because members help us all serve our temple, reach the larger community, support the collective voice of WRJ, and enable us as Sisterhood to provide educational, spiritual, and social programs to meet the diverse needs of women. Growth is critical to the success of Sisterhood. Your membership campaigns are one way to help enable growth. In tonight's webinar, we're going to go over how to get ready for a membership campaign. Preparation is critical. You wouldn't run a race without preparing. You wouldn't throw a dinner party without preparing. So before we start our membership campaign, we need to be ready from a Sisterhood perspective. First things first. Before you can begin an effective membership campaign, you need to evaluate your Sisterhood's readiness. Do you have the appropriate resources, the appropriate structure? Are you really ready to start a membership campaign? Without being prepared, you're likely to fail. So in this particular webinar, we're going to talk about some guidelines to go over to help you plan and prepare for your membership campaign. Preparation and planning are critical, as with anything. So developing a plan is one thing we'll talk about. We'll also talk about leveraging WRJ and your district resources. I don't know if you all know, but with WRJ on the website, there's a lot of different resources available for you. For example, the Just Ask campaign, Membership Matters, which is a wonderful brochure. It's about 50 pages of different ways to have a membership campaign to support your membership. Your WRJ and your district speakers can come and talk at a membership event. The WRJ listservs, which I'm sure many of you are already members of, are a great way to informally ask for opinions and ask for advice and tips from people who have done it before. The Leadership Conference is another great way to learn about different ways to support your Sisterhood and develop your membership. Some other resources you might want to consider from a WRJ perspective are the Yes Fund brochure and the current issues, the resolutions that WRJ has supported. Having these materials available at your membership events as handouts and giveaways help women who come who may not know what Sisterhood or what WRJ does learn a little bit more about how we impact things on a much, much broader basis than just our local community. Before we get to more tactical things, let's take a moment to take a survey.
Okay, all of you will see a quick poll on your screen. And the question is, what did your Sisterhood do this year to get ready for your membership campaign? Please select all that apply. And the options are established a membership committee, set a membership goal, enlisted support from my Sisterhood board, created a membership campaign calendar, and developed a plan to evaluate the campaign success. So please take a minute or so. Again, check all that apply, and we'll just wait a little bit so people can select their answers. Looks like people are still voting, so we'll give it just a little bit longer. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Okay, it looks like the majority of you have voted, so I'm going to close the poll. And here are the results. And it looks like 81% have enlisted support from the membership board, which is great. 74% have established a membership committee. 52, so a little over half, have set a membership goal. 23% have created a membership campaign calendar. And about 10% have developed a plan to evaluate the campaign success. So this just gives a little snapshot, I guess, of where everyone is at, and we're going to be talking about some of these things tonight. So thank you all for voting on the poll, and I'm going to now let Sharon continue with the presentation.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you, everybody, for voting. Those results are really interesting, and as we talk to some of the points later on, we'll refer back to them. But before we do that, let's just take a moment to dream. What would your ideal sisterhood look like? Would your sisterhood be a core group who does all the work, really just representing one or two of the demographics in our temple? Or would it be a group of women just like me, my friends and friends of my friends? You know, women I know personally and who I can count on because of my personal connection to pitch in with that whenever something needs to get done. Or might it be a diverse group of women, some who are my personal friends, but even more who are not, all of whom are committed to the ideals of Reform Judaism, our temple community, and each of whom bring unique talents and perspectives to help make our sisterhood a warm and welcoming community. Or might it be, oh, gee, that's a good question. I haven't really thought about that. Well, as we go through, we'll talk about goals and we'll talk about why it's important to have goals to help us as we're building our membership. Now, we've understood a little bit about getting the importance of being prepared and a little bit about what we might want our sisterhood to be. But how do I get there? What's the next step? Well, as we talked about in the poll, getting your board on board is critical, and it's wonderful that so many of you are already there. Your board doesn't need to do all the work. That's not what the purpose of the board is with regards to the membership campaign. But your board members really need to be ready, willing, and able to support the membership campaign. Some board members may need to be flexible and change in the way they see sisterhood. Sometimes the board becomes a little focused on being in the board and needing to reach out and attract other women, maybe with different demographics, different focus, is a challenge. And not every board, not every woman is like that, but sometimes the board needs to think about how sisterhood is to become a little bit more current and reflective of who the women in your community are at present. So your board members need to be willing to reach out to all women in the temple to engage them. So if they're at a Oneg Shabbat or another temple function, to put on their sisterhood hat and reach out maybe to talk to somebody that they don't know, maybe a woman who looks like she may be new to the community or maybe doesn't have any connections, as a way of making personal connections and engaging women in what sisterhood can do. And of course, the board's going to need to step in and help out with the campaign. But as I said, the board isn't running the campaign. That's what the membership committee is for. Your membership committee is really the key to the success of membership. And the critical people to have are your membership chair, your programming chair, and your marketing chair, as well as a cross-section of your general membership. So again, reaching those different demographic targets that you'd like to reach out to. If possible, somebody who's on your temple board who can bring back what's going on in the temple at large to the membership committee and what kind of events the temple is planning to do from an overlap and a synergy perspective. And your sisterhood president would also be part of the committee. But your membership chair, your programming chair, and marketing chair really perform a really strong three-legged stool, because your membership chair, they're going to focus on the who. Who are we looking to target? Who are we looking to attract? What types of programs can we, or what types of demographics can we do to reach out to your membership? Your programming chair will help with the programming aspect, the events, the activities that we're focusing on for this particular campaign. And your marketing chair is going to help with getting the word out, making sure we've got the appropriate communications, whether it be emails or phone calls or bulletins or mailings or posters or flyers or skywriting in the sky. But having those three chairs actively engaged and working together on the membership campaign is going to make it even stronger. One of the things, though, that your committee needs, in addition to a really strong committee, are some goals. And SMART goals are really, really important. They help you know where you're going so you can evaluate, take a checkpoint, did we get there? And if you haven't heard of SMART goals before, they stand for specific, measurable, agreed upon, realistic, and time-bound. So they provide some very quantitative ways of defining what you're trying to achieve, and they've got a time period, so it's not saying in 5 years or someday or in the future. Your time-bound may be in 6 months or it might be in a year. Realistic, so that you feel like you've got a chance of achieving them, because if they're not realistic, it's really hard to achieve them, and you're not going to feel like you've made a success. Specific and measurable, again, ways to know whether you've gotten there. And that agreed upon is so important. You want the membership committee and you want your board to be able to agree what these goals are so that you're all working towards the same objectives. What might a SMART goal look like? Here are two different types of goals, and again, the metrics, the number, the dates are really going to depend on your particular sisterhood and your circumstances. So one goal might be to have 3 targeted meet and greet programs between August and November. We'd like 10 women to attend each program and 2 women to join sisterhood. So your targeted meet and greet programs might be one that's targeted to brand new members of the temple, so potentially women who have joined in the past 6 months to a year. Another program might be targeted towards women with children in religious school. Another program might be targeted to newly empty nesters. So depending on how you want to define your empty nesters, they could be women with kids who have gone to college, maybe their nest isn't quite empty yet, but it's getting there, or women who kids are older, they're really out of the house. But again, those targeted meet and greet allows you to define a program, to define a forum and a structure that's targeted to potentially the interests of these focused groups. Another type of SMART goal might be to increase the number of members in sisterhood by 2% next year and 2% again the year after. Again, both of them are specific, they're measurable, we have numbers. They're realistic. They're not very large goals. Again, the 10 women attending and 2, if you have a very small temple community, you might want to make those numbers smaller. And they've been agreed upon. So these are examples of SMART goals that at the end you can look at and say, did we meet them? As part of your membership campaign, you want to have programs and events to help drive your membership growth, to help women become interested in what sisterhood's doing, to learn about sisterhood, and to feel engaged and welcomed. So you want to have a membership campaign. In sisterhood, pretty much every event you do is a membership event, even if you don't classify it as such, because you're trying to reach out to members, you're trying to do something for your membership or with your membership, whether it's to attract new membership, retain membership, or just do what sisterhood does. But your membership campaign are going to be more targeted and more focused. It's going to be a set of events, programs, and communications that are really designed to inform, educate, and engage women in what sisterhood is, what sisterhood does, so that they want to join sisterhood and become active with our sisterhoods. One of the things that we're going to talk about a little bit later is creating a year-long campaign calendar. So to look at not just the events in isolation, but as part of a larger year-long, or depending on your planning cycle, you might even do 18 months, but years seem to work in the worlds of sisterhood. But they tie together and they kind of can build on each other. It's also great, if you can, to engage your clergy, your senior staff, and your lay leaders. Again, your clergy, your senior staff may have connections with women that you don't have. They may have access to groups that you're trying to target that currently your sisterhood doesn't have a hook into. And so they may be able to provide some really good ideas to reach out to these women, what types of campaigns or programs would be of interest. And your lay leaders, again, they have connections with other women in the temple from a different perspective, and they can also provide some value and some assistance as you're thinking about what to do and potentially when to do it. From a membership campaign calendar perspective, for many of us, the summer is a little bit less pressured. We're not so busy doing sisterhood. I know our temple is kind of on, almost, the temple is on vacation. There's not as many programs. There's not as many events. Of course, a lot of people go on vacation, which makes doing things a little bit challenging. But the summer is a great time to kind of reflect, to plan, and define. So things to consider in the summer are making sure you've got your membership committee. Now, we talked about the membership committee being your membership chair, program chair, marketing chair, and a group of women that represent different demographics in sisterhood, as well as your sisterhood president. And I'm sure many of you, like in my sisterhood, right now we're doing nominating. We're working on our slate so we can vote on our slate for next year. So you want to start thinking as part of that who would be on your membership committee, but you'd want your membership committee to be formed and starting to work if they could in the summer. That gives them a time to plan, again, without all the busyness of sisterhood going on. As part of the summer activities would be defining your membership goals. So again, we talked about those SMART goals. What do we want to achieve this year? What would seem to be a realistic growth target? This summer is a great time to plan activities, events, and communication. So again, to think about over the next 12 months, what kinds of activities do we want to do? What types of structured communications do we want to have? Do we want to do a monthly mailing? Do we want to do weekly emails? Again, to target new women or to communicate with our existing membership. You also want to think about what membership materials do you need. If you're going to be sending out a mailing in the late August, September timeframe, and you want to have materials like your brochure, your report card, what did you do last year? If you want to have your calendar of events, not just your membership campaign, but all of your sisterhood events, you need to have that to send out. Your list of your board and your chair so women know who's involved in sisterhood and who can they reach out to for more information. And any WRJ or district information, you want to prepare that in the summer so that it's ready to go. It's ready when you have your meet and greets and you don't have to scramble. You also want to, in the summer if you can, reach out to your female temple members. So you might want to make a personal contact to any new member, make a phone call, especially women who potentially are new to the, not just your temple community, but to the physical community as well. See if, summer's a great time to get out and do something kind of social. Making mailings to every woman in the temple community, whether they're a sisterhood member or not, new or not. Having a general email or a general, paper mail, that's still a very good thing to do, is a great thing to do. Probably, again, towards the end of whatever your summer is. I know, again, people go away for vacations, they come back, and there's a giant stack of mail. That maybe isn't the best place you want your mailing to be. So if you can get it when that giant week's worth of mail from the post office isn't around, you might get some more viewing of it. And it's really important to say thank you as women join. So if your women or if your membership year starts in July, as ours does, you might get a large number of women who join in July. And if there's a way to personally thank them for continuing to support sisterhood, again, that's a great way to recognize and acknowledge people. In the fall, once you've kind of gotten back in the swing of things, that's a perfect time to start having some new and prospective member events. So in our SMART goal, we had talked about those 3 target events. So again, having those in the fall. Tailoring those events to your target population. The examples we had used were brand new members of the temple, women with children in religious school, and newly empty nesters. So again, thinking about the audiences that you'd like to reach out to if you're not really as involved in sisterhood as they might be. You would want to more than likely have an annual paid-up membership event. While we usually think of paid-up membership as a way of recognizing current members, so again, not necessarily getting new members, we find that we get a lot of women who realize that they hadn't signed up for Sisterhood had not rejoined as we're sending out those mailings. So it is a great way to get women to become Sisterhood members for the paid-up membership event. In the fall, you could consider doing follow-up mailings to those who have not joined. And as new members join, it's really a great thing if you can to call up and invite them personally to your upcoming events. So again, not the bulk of our members typically join before the holidays, but we always have women and families who join throughout the year. So again, taking that time to make that personal phone call and that personal connection is a great way to introduce people and give them a way to come and experience what sisterhood is. In the winter, where up here it's getting a little cold and snowy and things, again, maybe are quieting down, not as much outside stuff going on, and I know so much of that is depending on what geography you're in. You know, folks out in California, you don't have that cold and snow. But still, the winter's a great time to do a mid-year assessment. How are we doing on those SMART goals that we set up? If we were going to do 3 events in the fall, did we do them? And did we get the attendance that we expected? And, you know, did we get those 2 women to sign up at each of those events? And if we didn't, maybe it's a great time to look and say, why not? What didn't we do that potentially got in the way of our success? So as we're planning the events that we're going to do in the later winter and the spring, we might be able to take some corrective action. Speaking of that, we might want to do a midwinter meet and greet. The fall, I know for so many of us, is so hectic between the holidays and back-to-school nights and soccer games and just everything that's going on. For many of us, winter's a little bit quieter. There's not as many distractions. So for women who couldn't come to a meet and greet in the fall because their calendars were just so busy, or they were just so, you know, getting used to being in the new community, in the new temple, having something in the midwinter might be a quieter time and might be more amenable to them. So that, again, is a great way to reach out to women where they are. The other thing you might want to consider in the fall, in the winter, is doing a follow-up campaign for women who have not yet joined. WRJ's Just Ask program is a wonderful template as a way to contact women and talk to them about what sisterhood is in WRJ and just ask them to be a member. And it's amazing how many times if you just ask, women will sign up. And you may also want to consider doing targeted phone calls. So you may not want to call every woman in your congregation who has not joined sisterhood. You may want to look at the ones who are maybe new members for a year, maybe 3 years, make phone calls to them. Or women who had been members in the past who are still temple members and did not sign up again this year, again, to find out, re-engage them and see if they are still interested. Maybe it was just an oversight. In our temple, we always laugh. We have our dues on the bills. And it's amazing how many husbands cross those sisterhood dues off and how many women don't know that that happened. So we always get a chuckle when we get those calls in the during the year. In the spring, we've done most of what we need to do. The membership campaign for all of us in our sisterhoods and our temples is kind of, we're thinking about getting into the next year. Things are quieting down. So this is a great time to solicit feedback from your members, whether they're new members or members who have been around for a while or people who have been on the committee, about how did those programs go? Evaluate the programs and the events that you've done. If you did a regular communication or regular mailing, evaluate how those worked out. Think about what we'd like to do next year. While everybody's fresh in kind of how things went this year, great time to take some time out, document what would we like to see in the future from a membership campaign perspective. Again, nothing wrong with thinking about a spring meet and greet, and especially if you're in a northern climate where a lot of women might go down to warmer climates for the snowbird season, and maybe they've come back, so they might have missed a lot of things that you did, depending upon when you do your paid-up membership event and other programs. They may have, missed that opportunity. So again, doing some informal social things in the spring great way to connect them, catch them up on what's going on, and engage them for events that are still to come. Again, that spring meet and greet is another great opportunity to engage women who maybe at the beginning of the year said, this is the year I'm going to join Sisterhood and get active. And again, the year passes, things happen. All of a sudden, it's almost the end of the year, and you realize you didn't do it. And so again, having that spring opportunity is a great way to give those women a chance to say, oh, I keep forgetting, this is the perfect time for me. Another thing you want to make sure you do, and this is part of a membership campaign, but it's just part of good practices, to say thank you. Thank yous to the membership committee. They've worked really hard planning the events, thinking about the calendar, and making sure that everything happens. And there's a lot of time spent on personal outreach and contacts that everybody's doing. So again, saying thank you is wonderful. And so again, the membership committee, as well as your board, your chairs, and your volunteers. It's also great just to say thank you to your Sisterhood membership at large for all that they've done to enable Sisterhood to do what Sisterhood does. The last thing to think about in the spring is a final evaluation of this year's campaign. We had done our mid-year campaign in the winter, and now we've finished up all of our events. We've had a chance to kind of review it all kind of in a full year cycle. So did you meet your SMART goals? Again, we took a mid-year touch point maybe 3 or 4 months ago, so we had some time to make some corrective actions. How did we do overall on those goals that we've set up? So again, an end-of-year report card. Your new members that you've signed up, that you've gotten to join Sisterhood, have you integrated them into Sisterhood? It's great to have women who pay the dues and sign up, but it's even more important to have women who feel connected and engaged, A, because they're more likely to rejoin the next year, but it's also the great way to get new volunteers, to get new ideas and new energy. So it's important not just to have a campaign to get new members, but you want to make sure, and we'll talk about in future webinars, that you're integrating them into Sisterhood. And you want to look at the surveys. You want to look at your evaluation. You want to review your feedback and evaluate how did your membership campaign work this year. Towards the end, we'll give a little bit more about how we're going to use that evaluation. Within your membership campaigns, and we've talked about this, it's important to think about your women in your congregation as target populations. Women are in so many different places, stages, so it's hard to say what your typical woman is in your congregation. So ways to think about putting together targeted membership events or looking at your sisterhood, your women by their current Sisterhood affiliation. So again, your membership campaign, you'll target your never membered Sisterhood members, your didn't remember Sisterhood members. So again, what's their current affiliation? Have they never been a member? Were they a member and did they not renew? You want to look at your women and their family status. Do they have children? Are their children young? Are their children old? Are they grandmothers? So again, looking at from that family status. Your relationship status. Are they single women? Are they married? Do they have a partner? Again, different ways of kind of looking at women to think about programs and ways that we can attract and connect to the women in our community. Always important to think about work status because it affects availability for meetings and when people can become free. So, are they working full-time? Are they working part-time? Do they have jobs that are nights and weekends, jobs that are during the day? Again, is ways to think about when you're going to schedule your particular programs and how you're going to be able to reach out to different women. Now, it's also important to look at women by how engaged are they in the temple. I think we all know a lot of women, and I think we are a lot of those women who are very involved in our temple. We do a lot of things. We're on a lot of committees, and sometimes we feel like our temple is our home away from home. But there are also women who maybe are not as engaged in the temple. They may not have had an opportunity to become involved yet. So reaching out to women who aren't engaged, who haven't found that connection to sisterhood, is a great way to welcome women and to provide them with a place and a way to feel like they're a member, not just of sisterhood, but of the temple as whole. So sisterhood can provide that. It tends to be a little bit smaller and a little bit more welcoming than the temple community at large. And I know in our sisterhood, we love to find ways for women to feel like they're making a difference. So if there's an activity or a program that a woman is really passionate about, and it meets our goals and it kind of fits in with our ideals, we're more than happy to support them in making those programs happen. So again, sisterhood can really provide that connection. But when we look at these different ways to target and slice and dice, so we've got current sisterhood affiliation, family status, relationship status, work status, and temple engagement. If we put all those out in a giant matrix or a giant grid, we'd have a lot of boxes to check off. So it's important to realize that no one box contains every woman. We're all very different. And it's really not easy to assign a woman to a particular box. On the outside, they may look like they're in the purple box with the pink dots, but they really may be in the green box with the yellow stripes. So we need to make sure that as we're doing everything, and particularly in our membership campaign, we're being really broad and we're being really flexible, and realizing that some of our events may reach 100 women, or they may reach 500 women. And some of our events may only reach 10 women. But that's okay, because when we've done our goals, our SMART goals for events, we said this looks like it's an event that's going to focus very narrowly. So we're not expecting it to have 100 women show up. And so if we get that smaller target and we meet that goal, then we've had a successful event. As we're thinking about our events and we're thinking about our SMART goals, one way, again, we've talked about the goals, is as being critical to knowing where we're going. And if we got there, we also want to make sure we're having a plan so that we're driving towards that destination. So we've talked about the board being on board. We've talked about our membership committee. We've talked about our SMART goals. And we've talked about the calendar, kind of thinking about programs and events and checkpoints throughout the year. But we also want to make sure we have a plan to ensure the success of each event or activity in the campaign. So not the campaign as a whole, but each of the items that make up the campaign. That's the way to get to a successful campaign overall. So building to success, so getting to that successful place. The key components of our plan should be a list of programs, events, and communications. So we've, throughout the presentation, I talked about maybe 5 different meet and greets. So each of those meet and greets might be an event unto themselves. And we would want to make sure that each of those had an owner, a timeline for when we were going to start to plan the event and when we were actually going to do the event, some tasks that would go into that event, and any dependencies that were required to meet that event. So if we were talking about the event for our new temple members, we might have an owner for that. Our timeline and completion date could be things like getting the list of new members from the temple office, calling the new members, the event itself, having publicity for it, again, much more of a focused and tailored publicity, making sure that we have refreshments, making sure that we have the appropriate materials, but thinking through all of those actions that we need to do to get to a successful event. We'd also want to think about successful communications. So if we were going to do a broad mailing to all of the women in our temple at the end of August, and we wanted to make sure we had membership materials in that particular communications, one of our dependencies might be to make sure we've got the membership materials ready, we've got that checklist or that scorecard done before we send out the mailing. So again, identifying the dependency, the owner, so you have a sense of how all the pieces are going to fit together to get to a whole. as we're working on our events or our plan, we want to take some time out to track our success and to report on how we're doing. So we might want to do regular status updates, and they don't have to be every day or even every week. It depends on kind of the planning horizon. But it's a snapshot of right now. Where are we? How are we meeting those dates that we set up? Do we have any issues or concerns before we have a problem? So if we were looking for the Temple office to give us a list of the new members, and the Temple office system had a hardware malfunction and we weren't able to get that list in a timely manner, that's going to affect our ability to reach out to women, to give them sufficient lead time so that they know about the event and can plan to attend it. So again, those are important things to think about up front. It's also really important to do recaps at the end. So a brief summary. How did the program go? If we had evaluations and we asked the women who attended to evaluate it, summarizing those would be a great idea. How much did it cost and what materials did we use? So if we did a Hawaiian luau themed party, what did we use for the Hawaiian luau and how much did it cost? So again, if this was a great event and it was very successful and we decided we wanted to do it again, we'd have some information about how much it might cost that we can use in our budget. Did we achieve our goal? So again, we had a goal set out, and did we achieve it? From this particular event, what should we do again? What things really worked? What things really went well? And what do we want to build on? And what things didn't go so well? If we were going to do this again, what might we do differently? And I know in our sisterhood, we always talk about doing recaps because there's such great input for the next time we do it. And I find, and I don't know about you all in your sisterhoods, that sometimes we get done and we're so happy to be done that we don't take time to do the recap. So we lose that history, we lose that knowledge. And when we go to do the event the next time, it makes it a little bit more challenging. So taking that extra time is really helpful. And it's really helpful to help build on success. So what we've talked about tonight is committing, getting your board on board, having a membership committee. So committing to that membership campaign and building that foundation. Planning, working on our membership calendar, thinking about the events, the activities that we're going to do as part of this year-long campaign. Executing, doing the campaign, having the event, sending out the mailings, making the phone calls. Taking time to evaluating events as they've occurred, and evaluating the program overall, so that we can take a checkpoint and say, are we ready to commit to doing it again next year? Now that we've done our campaign, we can let the recruiting begin. So we talked in the very beginning about what might your sisterhood look like. And if you defined your sisterhood as a kind of your ideal sisterhood as being a diverse group of women who are committed to the ideals of Reform Judaism in our temple community, each of whom brings unique talents and perspectives to help make our sisterhood a warm and welcoming community, well then let's go get those women and bring them into our sisterhoods.
Great. Thank you, Sharon, for a wonderful presentation, very informative and engaging. We now have reached the Q&A portion of our webinar tonight. And thank you for those of you who have sent in your questions. I have got a handful of questions. And of course, if you have any additional questions to add, please type them in now into the questions panel. Again, since we are a large group, we're not going to be using the raise hand feature. But again, you can type your questions into the panel. And if we don't get to answer all of the questions in tonight's live webinar, we will still receive them after you type them, and we will follow up with you after tonight's event. So let me just take a look at the questions. So I have one here from Susan Klein. She asks, and I present this to all of the panelists here tonight, what if we have no marketing or program chairs? What would a membership committee look like?
This is Sharon. Do you want me to? I can start.
Sure.
Hi, Susan. Susan's from my temple. That's why I'm laughing. I think in that instance, it's important to identify a woman who's willing to take on that role within the membership committee. So again, if you don't have those specific chairs, there's other issues that we could probably focus a whole series of webinars on. But you'd still want to make sure that on the committee you had somebody who was acting in the role of marketing and acting in the role of programming specifically for your membership campaign.
Great. Okay. And again, any of our panelists can jump in to these questions. Another question comes from Sheila Black. She asks, is the practice of including sisterhood dues on the temple dues bills widespread? Does it help to increase sisterhood membership?
Okay, this is Dara. I'll answer that for Sheila. So I think this practice, it really depends on your sisterhood. I've heard both sides of doing this. And it also depends on how it is on the bill. If it's completely and totally automatic, added into the dues payment, people will automatically pay for it, and it will instantly boost your membership. Whether they're active members or not is totally different, but it will certainly increase your numbers that way. If it's just an option, people have the choice to pay it or not. So in that respect, it may not boost your membership, but it's also people really do like having it there. They do find it to be a convenience to write one check or possibly two, depending on how it's done, so you get your checks straight into sisterhood. And that brings me to another point. If they do write one check, then you need to make sure that you're keeping up with that so that your bookkeeper in the congregation is keeping track of that so you know what to expect and that you're getting those dues. You know, the temple is cutting you a check for your members. So you really have to figure out what works, and I've seen it go both ways, and I've seen people have it on their bill for many years, and then they decide to take it off for one reason or another, and then they go back. So you'd really have to figure out which is the best system for you.
Great. Thank you, Dara. Okay. Another set of questions comes in from Carol Chaikin. Her first question is, what is an effective meet and greet? I know Sharon mentioned a couple of them on tonight's webinar, since they are small events and do not target entire community.
This is Sarah. Hi, Carol. I'm happy to answer this question. We've had meet and greets for even prospective board members. Even if they're relatively new to sisterhood, we've had small events, fewer than a dozen people, and we target it, we keep it small, so that we have some board members, some current sisterhood board members, and also some new sisterhood members, or perhaps some sisterhood members who have expressed an interest in joining our board. And they're usually at someone's home. They're very informal, and it gives the new members and also potential board members an opportunity to meet some of us who have been more involved in sisterhood over the years. And it's a nice informal gathering, so they can ask questions, and you can target different populations as well. You can have meet and greets for religious school moms. If you have religious school on Sunday morning, you could try something then. You know, at 9 in the morning, you could offer them coffee and a bagel and do something like that. So if you target different populations, as Sharon was discussing in her presentation, I think if you have small groups, you target them to different interests, they can be highly effective.
And this is Sharon, and just one other thing I'd like to add is that you might have a meet and greet where again, if you're doing something on a Sunday morning, where you don't have to be there for the whole time. So it's kind of a drop-in and very, again, casual and informal. So it's, if somebody's coming and dropping off their kids and then they need to go somewhere, they don't feel like they need to make a commitment of an hour and a half to kind of learn about sisterhood. You may do other programs, and again, you don't have to call them all meet and greets, where it's maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours, maybe at night or off-site, where it's more of a program as opposed to just kind of a casual chat. But again, understanding the demographics and who you're targeting helps you define that event appropriately.
Great, thank you both. Another question which comes from Carol about tonight's webinar is how to ensure that the owner of an event or program does not get overloaded. Is there any rationale for a way of dividing up tasks?
This is Sharon. I can give some thoughts on how that happens. I think that's where it's important to, as with any type of activity that we're looking for a volunteer for, to understand what bandwidth or what time commitment a person can make and help assign them to the appropriate task to work within that commitment. But that's why it's also important to have more than one person doing different tasks, because you kind of can share and spread the burden out a little bit. So there's a support mechanism. Having the chairs be available, again, to kind of provide some counsel and some advice and kind of help move things along when they need to, or if something needs to be kind of shifted to somebody else, identifying folks who can help out in those small areas. But it's important to identify those tasks at a small enough level that women feel like they're doing something that's meaningful and that's important, but it's within their comfort level for where they are at this particular point in their life, and not just dumping the whole thing on them and running.
I agree. I think, if you give them a small task that they're comfortable with, they, in the end, feel like they've given what they can, they've done what they can do, and their time was appreciated. And hopefully the next time something comes up, maybe they would take on another program with the same size of task, or maybe they would take on a little bit more. And I think also knowing that there are people accessible to them, that they're there to say, I can help you. If you need something, please call me. Not leaving them out, to just figure things out. Really being, accessible to them and letting them know that you support them, and of course, thanking them will certainly go a long way as well.
I might also chime in too. I guess we've all got lots of experience with this sort of thing happening and ways to try to avoid it in the future. Hopefully you've got a programming committee. And if the programming committee discusses each of the programs and has regular meetings, then if the owner of a particular event feels overwhelmed, they can feel free to discuss that at their committee meeting, or bring it up if they need to privately by calling the program committee chair. But hopefully it can be discussed openly at a committee meeting. And then tasks can be perhaps more fine-tuned and delineated. You could even create a spreadsheet if you like. If it's a huge event like a cooking demonstration, you're going to have a myriad of jobs. And so then it's going to come to the board, from the programming committee to the board. And as Sharon was talking about buy-in for a membership committee, you also need buy-in from your board for certain large events as well. And that hopefully will help alleviate some of the problems here.
Great. Thank you, all of our panelists, everyone, for answering the questions. I know we have a few things to wrap up. Let's I'm gonna thank you to all the attendees. We just have a few more quick items. Thank you for participating, submitting your questions. Again, if we didn't get to all the questions tonight, we will follow up with you after the webinar. So I'm now going to hand it over to Dara.
Okay, thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. We appreciate you taking the time. And just a few reminders, you'll see, there's many WRJ resources available on the website in the leadership portion. So, be sure to look for all the templates and the materials that will definitely help you. And then we also have our next webinar coming up. And that's going to be on recruitment, which I will be leading, and I'm really looking forward to that. And that's going to be Monday, April 2nd at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And don't forget that you also need to sign up individually for each webinar, just like you did tonight. You'll need to sign up again for the recruitment and for the retention as well. We have all our contact information. That, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. We're happy to answer any questions by email or by phone. Please don't hesitate. There's also going to be a recording of this webinar if you want to look back at any of the information. It will be available. The PowerPoint and a checklist will also be up on the WRJ website within a few days, and we're looking forward to our next webinar. And again, we thank you and appreciate your time and all that you do for WRJ, and we hope you have a good evening and the rest of your week. Thank you.